Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished entrepreneur from the US, Mr. David Nour. Noor, welcome to the show.
Ash, good to be with you.
Thank you. Noor is a relationship economics advisor. He's an educator and an executive coach. He's the founder of the Noor Group. He's an author of 11 books, and all of you know I'm very partial to authors. He has been named among the global gurus and the 30 top leadership professionals, as well as the 50 thinkers radar class of 2021. So, Noor, let's start about talking about your incredible journey. When I was reading about you, you came from Iran with a suitcase and $100, and look what you have built. Tell me about this journey.
Very kind of you. Yeah, parents are now retired teachers. They still live back in Iran. The old regime had an exchange program where in the 70s we went to Kuwait. And the new regime came in and canceled that and called my parents back. And Ash, I got to tell you, now that I have kids of my own, I can't imagine what an incredibly unselfish thing to do to send. They realized it wouldn't be I'd just have a much better life outside the country. So they sent me to the US with $100, a suitcase. I literally didn't know anyone, and I didn't speak a word of English.
Wow.
I was lucky enough that I came and lived with an aunt and uncle that I hadn't seen since birth. I was a teenager. Came here to Atlanta, finished high school here, got my Eagle Scout here, went to university here, and I'm blessed that I've been able to build the American dream of a life. Married now 27 years, 2 kids. Mom unfortunately passed away from COVID last year, but dad is still alive. He's still back in Iran, and it's been an incredible journey.
Amazing. And about the Noor Group, tell me about the work that you're doing in this group.
Sure. So my career was really kind of three phases. Early on was technology. So IBM, Silicon Graphics, Business Objects. I was always passionate about technology, and what I was really passionate about was the business applications of technology. Then I went to the consulting route. So PwC, before PwC was formed, and after my executive MBA, I became president of a company, and we merged and sold that business. And then I spent several years at a private equity firm. And Ash, I saw companies that set themselves apart from their competitive peers, didn't just have great products and services. I saw them build great relationships, both inside the organization as well as external to it. And I said, there's got to be something there. So after the private equity, I left, formed Noor Group 20 years ago, and we focus on intelligent and profitable growth. We're enablers of that for our clients. So through data analysis, through modeling, through looking at their business model, looking at where not growth for just sake of growth or growth at any cost, but where does growth really make sense? Where does growth look like if you were like a venture capital, bet on 8, 10 ideas, know that most of them will go nowhere. But the 2 that hit are going to be the future of your business. So where are those? And how do we nurture those? And how do we build those? So we bring a systematic approach. We bring processes, we bring capabilities. My business partners, our technology and marketing practices. So we help clients really fuel their growth through strategic relationships. As I said, really intelligent, profitable opportunities.
Amazing. And when you say you're a relationship economics advisor, and I see that little banner behind you, help me understand the meaning of relationship economics.
Sure. So the part of the world you're from and I'm from, and for a lot of other parts of the world, we build relationships first,
correct,
from which we do business.
Okay. Yes,
unfortunately, as Americans, right, or even Westerners, we're so focused on the business that if and only if the business works, we may ask about your family or where you vacation or what do you do when you're not working.
Right.
So what I thought about years ago was there's fundamentally two camps.
Mm.
There's the art of business relationships,
Mhm.
how to get a business card, how to connect with someone, one-on-one. And believe it or not, there's actually a science. It's called social network analysis.
Mm.
It actually has nothing to do with Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter.
Mhm.
It's studying patterns in human interaction. So why do you get along with some people and not others? Why did you connect with some of your neighbors and not others? So it's fascinating. But Ash, it's also incredibly academic, and it puts most people to sleep in about 15 minutes.
Correct.
So I said, what if we brought those two together?
Yeah.
So relationship economics is really the art and science of business relationships. And it's about how to become more intentional in the relationships you choose to invest in.
Amazing.
And I would submit for your audience, every one of us on any given day, there's a whole lot of people you can call. There's a whole lot of people you can meet with. There's a whole lot of people you can invest in.
Correct.
Here's $1 million question. Which ones? And how do you know? And how do you, as I said, become more intentional? A, you think of them, begin to think of them as investments. B, how do you become more intentional, more strategic, more quantifiable in the relationships you choose to invest in?
Fabulous. Thank you for great response. And I know we'll talk about your books, but is one of your books on relationship economics as well?
It is. This one, the green one, is actually the third. That was my first book, and it's done quite well. It's published by Wiley, and they were kind enough this past year to ask me to completely rewrite it, and it's now third edition, and it will be out in February of next year.
Wow.
And then the other one behind me is Curve Benders. That's the most recent one. But all of my books, the common thread is this idea of not just intellectually understanding that relationships are important, but really applications of relationships in various aspects of business and growth and strategy and leadership. Ash, I'm doing a lot of work right now around talent. How do you identify, attract, retain, develop exceptional talent? McKinsey published a great paper that said, individuals who build friends, who build relationships at work are much more likely to stay with the company, with the team, with the organization. So there's a lot of myths and misperceptions about relationships. One of them is just purely external. A lot of the work that I do is about internal relationships with the organization, and how do we ensure that people continue to get to know each other. And that's where the trust and that's where the true collaboration is going to come from.
Well said. So let's now move to another aspect of your life, which is as an executive coach. Given your own background of the corporate world, private equity, author, what made you select coaching as something that you wanted to be in?
Yeah, I've always been fascinated. If you think about it a second, the best entertainers in the world, whether in Bollywood or Hollywood, use coaches they're already doing well. They want to get better, or they want to raise the bar on themselves. Great athletes, from Tiger Woods to, may he rest in peace, Kobe Bryant, had coaches, very specific coaches to work on the very specific facets of, and they're all starting from a really strong position which they want to elevate. Regrettably, in business, somehow coaching is seen as something for damaged people. And I don't know about you. I don't want to work with somebody who's damaged. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a go get professional help. So what I start to look at is how can individual leaders show up and consistently show up in the best version of themselves? And if you think about that question, there's really three ways I know how to get there. One is you got to acquire a new skill. The second is the knowledge that you gain from the application of that skill. And the last is changes in behavior. So do I teach some skills? Sure, especially if you're a growing leader or the next generation leader. The knowledge I can't do for you. You got to go apply that skill to kind of gain that knowledge yourself. So a lot of the coaching work that I do is around behavior changes. And what I found out is that behaviors are not a switch. You don't turn on and off a behavior. You're either going to dial it up or you're going to dial it back. So I ask a lot of questions about that last meeting. How did it go? And how did you feel? And if I were to ask people in the room, how did they felt about how you showed up and the value you added or the contributions or the things, sometimes leaders, the thing they can do is say nothing. So we look at a lot of their behaviors. And I'm a big fan of Marshall Goldsmith. I was part of his MG 100 program. And I love Marshall for the bad behaviors in leaders he points out. And the bad behaviors that keep leaders from being great.
Correct.
And those are the things I help my clients really think about their own behaviors and how they show up on a consistent basis, as I said, to become the best version of themselves.
Fascinating. And when you look at your own background, of multifaceted background, so many different things that you have done in life and very successfully, how has your own background supported your own coaching philosophy, your values, and your style?
Marshall, in his book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, the entire chapter 4 is focused on 20 behaviors that keep executives from reaching up. And Ash, I can tell you, I've probably made every one of those mistakes, from my own technology and consulting and all the backgrounds. Not only I've made the mistakes myself, I've seen executives make most of those mistakes. So I keep telling my kids that I didn't paint on the gray hair, right? So, and there used to be a lot more. So you and I have seen a lot of different scenarios. We've seen a lot of great operators that turn people off, or fantastic sales, leaders that are very good at what they do, but they burn bridges all over the place. And if you peel back the onion, as I said, the best version of every leader is typically going to come from changes in behavior. So combination of my own experiences, combination of working across multitude of industries, across multitude of geographies, gives me that broad purview that I'm blessed that I haven't walked into. I haven't seen what's happening there before. I'm working with a client right now that's going through a merger and acquisition. They're actually merging with two of their biggest competitors. And it's a really tense environment because for years they've been doing this and now they got to do this. So again, my private equity days, we bought and sold 110 different companies. So I saw both how to bring them together, but also how to divest, separate kind of teams. And so when I lead a leadership program or when I'm coaching them, I tap into those experiences. I tap into sometimes those relationships, ask them, and I kind of bring them to the table. I recently, I like taking some executive clients from one industry to speak to leaders, to visit with leaders from a completely different industry.
Right.
And Ash, using the same, right? If I'm in technology, I go to technology conferences, I read technology trade magazines, all my friends are in technology. In essence, I have a very myopic view of the tech space. And I'm not looking at what's happening in industrial manufacturing or what's happening in retail or CPG because I don't think it's relevant.
Correct.
What I'm missing is there's various common threads across all of these. Supply chain, talent, technology transformation. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And when you do that, when you look beyond your own purview, beyond your own industry, you broaden your horizons. And executives want to talk to peers. They want to talk to other operators who face some of the same challenges and opportunities. And that's what I do. I leverage relationships to bring, again, one executive from Siemens to talk to a cybersecurity company, or an executive from Coke to talk to a travel company, because what they do is they expand their horizons and perspective on challenges and opportunities.
Wonderful. Thank you. What a great response. My next question to you, Noor, is on culture. You are living in a very, very diverse, culturally diverse country in the US. And yet you come from Iran, I come from India. And a lot of us have been traditionally been taught that let your work speak for itself, right?
Sure.
A lot of us don't even want to talk about the work that we are doing. And yet, as a coach, you are trying to bring the best out from them. I want to get your perspective on how does culture impact coaching?
I think it's incredibly impactful. And let me answer that this way. Nothing replaces great work. And I'm Ash, I'm a big believer that we're products of advice we take. If you think about it a second, we're all products of the advice we take. So several mentors in my journey have driven into me, number one, go do exceptional work.
Correct.
And as a coach, you're only as good as the quality of the clients you choose to work with. And Ash, I want the business. I want to work with that leader, but not if it's not the right chemistry, not if it's not the right environment, not if that person, I learned this with my kids. If they don't want to be coached, right? If they're not open to being coached, neither you, me, or anybody else is going to be able to make a difference in their life. So one of the questions I ask every executive I work with is, are you coachable? And it's actually a trick question because who's going to say no? But I want to see how they react. I want to see how they respond. I want examples where, and if you think about Ash, these senior executives who are surrounded by people that will tell them yes all day long. I want an example of somebody who pushed back.
Correct.
I want an example of somebody who said no. I want an example of somebody who called them out on something and how they responded. And so what I'm looking for is A, are you coachable? B, do you want a coach who will tell you what you want to hear or what you need to hear? Because I tell them up front, you're either going to love my candor or you're going to hate my candor. But the only way I know how to be is candidly tell you that's not going to work. That's maybe old school thinking. You're trying to lead in the post-pandemic world with pre-pandemic mindset. And that's not going to work, right? So let me give you an example. Gallup had a fascinating study that said preponderance of employees don't want to come back to a physical office, right? Conversely, the executives are struggling in building a culture remotely. So they want you to come into the office. So how do you do that? How do you bring employees in, to and give them incentives or kind of get them back to the office where they don't want to do that, right? So I kind of, I'm helping executives think through, if you're going to ask people to come in, it's got to be for the right reasons. It's got to be, and it can't be just information sharing. You want to share information with me, let's just do it online.
Absolutely.
But it's very difficult to have a meaningful conversation about our purpose and our strategy and solve complex problems kind of virtually. So let's create a spectrum of what is best done in person and what is best done virtually. And it's kind of, in the past, we had job descriptions that we would fit talent into. Now I believe we got to find the talent that we wrap the job around them.
Correct.
So this is an example of a change in mindset, change in leadership style and behavior that particularly old school leaders need to begin to embracing. And you can't do that culturally if you can't have that chemistry, if you can't be candid. My last point here, as a coach, and you and I learned this culturally, you have to demonstrate their best interest at heart. You genuinely have to care. You genuinely have to want to see them succeed. Genuinely, you don't need the spotlight. You're okay being behind the scenes because you want to put that coaching client front and center. You want them to be the governor or the president. You want to be in the campaign. You want to be behind the scenes and put them front and center. If you need the spotlight, if you need the accolades, if you need all of, it's going to be very difficult for you to be a really effective and impactful coach.
Well said. Great response. So, David Nour, let's now talk about your books. We did talk about your first book and the book that you're releasing in February. But tell me what motivates you to write, and is there a schedule you follow?
For your audience, writing a book has got to be one of the biggest love-hate relationships
I
in the
agree with
world,
you.
because it's never easy, but it certainly gets easier because you get into a routine. So number one, it takes me about 4 years. Back up a second. I often start with a question. I often start with a question that I'm genuinely curious about, and I start to read. I read extensively. I ask a lot of questions from every leader. I have regular conversations with my clients and the senior executives and boards. Ash, at some point, if you identify a topic once, you think, yeah, it's just a point. See it a couple of times, you think it's a line. You see it several times, it's a trend, right? Correct. And when I see a challenge or an opportunity across very different industries or size companies or geographies, I see it in the US, I see it in Europe. I was in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I saw it there, and I'm like, there's got to be something here. So I begin to research, I begin to have conversations. It takes about 4 years for me for an idea to percolate. And at some point, you've read enough, you've talked enough, you've coached enough, you've consulted enough about an idea that you feel like you have something to say.
Correct.
So I keep both digital folders, but also physical folders of these ideas. And I write up a letter to my publishers. I've published with 5 different publishers. Here's an one pager. Here's the idea. Here's what I think it is. It's viable. And I have the relationship with them that we'll set up a call and we'll talk through it. And they're like, we like it, go. They send me the contract. And the physical writing for me takes about 6 months, 3 to 6 months. But I and you and your audience would appreciate the fact that I'm not writing Harry Potter, right? I'm never gonna get wealthy writing books. Books for me are $10 business cards. They become an opportunity to share your ideas and perspectives. And hopefully, my goal with every book is to provoke my readers, my audience to think and to think and lead differently. And if I can change one person's life because they read or one thing they read and they tried and it worked in their environment, Ash, my job is done. I'm happy with that effort. But like I said, I've been blessed. I've gotten 12 out. I've got another 7 in my head in various stages. It is a arduous. It is a painful at times. It is labor intensive. I have graduate students that do a bunch of social science research for me. I interview executives. Like I said, it takes about 6 months to a year to kind of crank one of these things out. But at the end, you gain an enormous sense of pride when the book is finally done and published, and you get to see the cover and it comes out because of the effort, because of the conversations, because of the research, because of the examples and the stories that are in the book. And again, my goal is, let me change hopefully one life. Let me change one person's perspective, and I'll be pleased with the results.
Well said. Well said. David Nour, we've now run out of time. So I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your incredible journey and how you landed in the US with a suitcase and $100, and how you built such an amazing, not just business, but you seem to have done an amazing amount of work as an author. You seem to have, done a huge amount of giving back as a coach. Thank you for talking to me about your journey, about your philosophies of coaching. Thank you for talking to me about your books. I mean, I know you have 11, and I'm delighted to learn that you've got 8 more ideas, maybe many more in your mind. But thank you for speaking to me, and good luck in everything that you're doing.
Ash, thank you for having me, and likewise, all the best to you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast. A platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.